Grace and peace to you in the name of God the Creator, Christ the Redeemer, and the Spirit who sustains us. Amen. We've reached a turning point in Luke's gospel, the theological halfway mark. Jesus has been an itinerant preacher, teacher, and healer traveling throughout Galilee. He's gained a reputation as a troublemaker. He raises the hackles of the religious leaders by challenging their perspectives and daring to suggest that all people, especially the marginalized, are worthy of God's favor. Last Sunday, we saw him revealed in all his glory on the mountaintop, talking with Moses and Elijah about his exodus, his suffering and death. The Bat Kol, the daughter of a voice, the means through which God speaks directly to us, claimed him as God's chosen one and commanded the disciples to listen to him. And now, in the wake of these events, Jesus is resolved to go to Jerusalem, and the disciples are with him. He won't follow a straight path to get there. Like the Israelites did during their 40-year exodus from Egypt, he and his disciples will cover a lot of territory, both geographically and theologically, so that he can prepare himself and try to prepare them for the events that will transpire there. But not only that, he also has some things to teach them and us about discipleship. Our Lenten journey is just as winding as Jesus' journey to Jerusalem, and we are invited to consider our own discipleship as we move through this season of the church year, this season of our lives. The city of Jerusalem bookends Luke's gospel and is woven throughout it, sometimes almost as a character, sometimes as a set piece, sometimes, like in today's text, almost like something that we can see out of the corner of our eye, a presence that we can sense but aren't fully aware of. The salvation that God offers to God's people is deeply rooted in Israel's story, and Jerusalem becomes the embodiment of that salvation. The temple is the central place where heaven and earth meet and where God meets the people. So for Jesus to be headed towards Jerusalem, towards his exodus and his ascension, is a deliberate decision that says much about Jesus as the Messiah we need. He calls us to be disciples and challenges us to faithfully live God's love. Jesus' turn from traveling through Galilee to heading towards Jerusalem takes him through Samaria. There are centuries of history between the Jews and the Samaritans. Once one people, they were divided when Israel was divided into two kingdoms after the death of King Solomon. Jerusalem, where the temple was located, was in the southern kingdom of Judah. In order to discourage reunification, the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel, whose capital was Samaria, discouraged temple worship and encouraged worship on Mount Gerizim. The people remained faithful to the same God, but over time, their priests developed their own versions of the sacred texts and their own religious practices and traditions. Similarly to Jesus' relationship with the Pharisees, the Jews and the Samaritans had enough in common to bring their differences into stark relief. In the 900 years between when Israel divided into two kingdoms and Jesus' day, there were times when there was serious enmity between the two peoples. But it wasn't just this that causes the Samaritans not to be welcoming to Jesus and the disciples. Jesus' firm resolve to head to Jerusalem tells the Samaritans that this isn't just another pilgrimage, observant Jews on their way to the temple for Passover. Jesus' reputation has probably preceded him, and the Samaritans have to live under Herod's rule too. The people in this town aren't interested in some foreigner making trouble and drawing official attention, then leaving. Because as we've seen, for Jesus, the religious is political, and the political is religious. There is no separating the two. For Jesus, politics isn't the art of the possible. It's God's love made manifest. It's the work of feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, clothing the naked, and healing the sick. And in a society where the politically expedient thing is often to defer to the wealthy and elite, even if it's at the expense of the vulnerable and poor, Jesus' work is radical and potentially even dangerous. And to be seen in Jesus' company is to risk being guilty by association. But all James and John appear to see is the ancient enmity run amok, and they're not happy about it. From their perspective, the Samaritans are heretics, and apparently they have been granted a power the likes of which hasn't been seen since the days of Elijah, a prophet in the northern kingdom, who destroyed his enemies with bolts of fire from the heavens. Jesus isn't happy with this picture of discipleship, however. He has no wish to condemn the Samaritans of this town for their lack of hospitality, knowing that not everyone he encounters along the way is capable of committing to the discipleship that he is asking of them. We have 3 cases in point in our text for this evening. The first is a person who says they're willing to follow Jesus wherever he goes, to whom Jesus replies that he doesn't even have a place to sleep for the night. So this new potential follower will no longer have a place to call home. The second is someone whom Jesus calls, who wants to bury their father first. From Jesus' response, it's possible that the father isn't dead yet, or it's possible that Jesus' response is exaggerated to make a point, not meant to be taken at face value. And the third is someone who offers to follow Jesus but wants to say goodbye to family first. Jesus' response is yet another callback to the days of the prophets, when Elijah called Elisha. Elisha was at the plow. Before leaving, he kissed his parents goodbye and then killed the oxen and burned the plow as a cooking fire for the oxen to feed his community. Discipleship is about commitment. These 3 people are all wrestling with following Jesus, but something keeps coming up. And that's what Jesus is saying to each of them. They need to determine what is most important. Is it following Jesus? Or is it the other things that come up, that seem important in the moment? Are they counting the cost of discipleship and finding that the price is too high to pay? Often we get the message that we are being asked to count the cost of our discipleship. Is it worth it to follow Jesus, to swim against the tide that says that it is radical and can even be dangerous to try to heal the sick, feed the hungry, house the homeless, and clothe the naked? That it isn't worth it to stand up for people who look different or speak differently or worship differently. But Jesus doesn't ask us to count this cost. Jesus just asks us to follow, knowing sometimes it will be hard, and sometimes it will be lonely, and sometimes we will feel out of step with society, even with other people of faith. The opposite of faith is not doubt. Doubt is a component of faith. Doubt is the thing that causes us to ask questions, to seek answers, to grow and stretch and learn. The opposite of faith is despair. And so if we choose faith over despair, we know that from time to time we will see glimpses of Jesus' glory. From time to time we will be reminded of the wonder and awe of the transfiguration. But faith is about perseverance. It is about walking the long road to Jerusalem with Jesus, the road to the Exodus, the road to the cross. Because we know that at the end of the road, we will meet Jesus face to face. Amen.